What's up guys, welcome back to another video, start of a new build series. So here is a car that I'm sure you've all been eyeballing in the background of videos for months. It's another one of those cars that is literally 6 months behind schedule. It was meant to be done freaking yonks ago, but you all know how the story has gone of late. It's going to be another turbo LS Patrol. So very similar to the last one we did, LS, GU Ute, single turbo. This is a stock bottom end Gen 3 LS1, so, you know, very, very similar to the last setup. This is an engine that we built for this customer just about 12 months ago, a fair while ago. So we actually built this engine. He supplied everything, so it's got a cam we wouldn't normally put in an LS, but the specs were actually quite favorable for what was going to be a single turbo setup. So, yeah, again, just another turbo LS 4-wheel drive setup. Again, just carrying through what we have learnt over all of the last ones that we've done and just trying to make this one a little bit better. Again, just try and do each one we do a bit better than the last. We are moving along. Look how freaking good this looks. Looks amazing. So the turbo is all positioned. Once again, just like last time, a lot of care taken to ensure the turbo is positioned in such a way that you get easy access, easy maintenance to the air filter without having to remove the snorkel or anything else. You can just sort of pull out once you take this intake pipe out. So again, following the theme of the last one, a lot of forethought, a lot of planning in ensuring that this thing is easy to work on, easy to maintain, and problem-free as possible. So as you can see, this one we've gone a little bit different in the manifolds compared to the last one. We have actually gone to the effort to make full 4-into-1 manifolds. So a few things with this one being Mark's Adapters kit instead of the Castlemaine rod shop that we had in the last one. Everything's sort of moved forward just a little bit. As you can see, we've actually got a little bit of room there behind the engine on the firewall. So even with the 4-into-1s, as you can see, we still have quite a good little bit of room there to get our oval dump pipe down, just like the last one was. And what we have found going with the 4-into-1s is that by the time you do the log and you step up the pipe or the tube size to accept the next runner, and by the time you step that up to bring it forward, it actually doesn't take up that much less room than the 4-into-1s do. Keeping the same tube size all the way through and just having 4 of them, it actually allows you to sort of shape it and make it in such a way where you can end up with just as much room as you would with a log. So that's all well and good in its own as far as space goes, but one thing that you obviously can't get away from with a 4-into-1 is that it is a lot more cutting, a lot more welding, so that is a lot more time involved. So it is a lot more time consuming, but we really wanted to try and get the 4-into-1s into this patrol after the issues we had with the last one. So one of the biggest things, obviously, is the fact that once it's all together like this, there's a lot of places you can't get at with the welder. So there is an immense amount of planning and time that goes into welding one of these up, because you have to be very careful about the welds you make, such as these, with pieces apart before they actually get welded into the manifold, to ensure that you can get your weld all the way around the piece. So it looks... honestly, I can't even say that it looks simple, because it doesn't look simple, but there's just so much planning that goes into ensuring that you can actually get weld on all of the pieces there. So yeah, can't stress enough how much extra time goes into doing a 4:1 over a log. But yeah, we are sort of quite committed to it. So after the problems we had with the last Turbo Patrol, those of you who watched that series, we did have some issues where it seemed to be a little, like a really fine window where it wanted timing. And it was getting quite noisy at timing and boost that it just, quite frankly, shouldn't have from our previous experiences. So we know that obviously with log manifolds, there are plenty of people around that are making huge power through log manifolds. We don't particularly think that it was a manifold being a restriction or anything like that, but even though it's turboed and even though there's a lot of back pressure, there's still a lot of pulses and waves going on in your exhaust manifold. And the difference between people making a lot of power with those log manifolds is they probably are using pretty adequately sized turbos and turbine wheels and housings, which allows obviously a lot more flow. The difference is with us doing these patrols and 4 drives with turbo LSs, we are trying to size these turbos as small as we can get away with for our power goals. And the reason being is that you want these things to be responsive. You're trying to move a lot of weight. You know, you want boost early. You don't want something that's going to be laggy because you got so much weight to move. So given that we have, or by nature with what we do with these things, we are working with quite a lot of back pressure, we do believe that having those log manifolds and having those pulses and things at work could have very well been the problem with the last one, because by the time we had rebuilt the engine was all fresh. We were all over that. There was nothing mechanically, as far as the engine goes, that would point to why it didn't want the timing that it wanted. Obviously, it worked out fine. That car still made plenty adequate power for what we wanted. It just ended up being quite a small window. It was a bit of a pain to tune, which we didn't really think it should have been. So this will be a really good indication as to whether that is the case or not. So that's why we've gone through so much effort to try the 4:1s on this particular build, see how much difference it makes. Obviously, this is a different cam in this engine as well, so there's quite a few different things going on here, but it'll be interesting to see whether the 4:1s, allow us to get a little bit more timing into this thing, which should hopefully get us to that sort of 500 horsepower mark maybe. Not that we want to go any further than that. Same with the last one. It made plenty adequate power for a stock Gen 3 bottom end. We're not that worried about that. So just be interesting to see, basically. We don't particularly need to go 500 horsepower. But not only that, we are also interested to see if it spools up a little bit earlier. That was another thing with the last patrol we did. We thought that it was spooling a little bit late for what it was. We thought it should have been coming on a little bit earlier. So it'd be interesting to see whether that's going to be the case with this one as well. So that's where we're going with it. So Rex is powering through this. He's just run out of argon, so he's gone to get some gas. So I'm just filming this in between him doing that. But yeah, these are going to be some very, very nice manifolds. A lot of time and effort gone into these manifolds to get them sorted. So a couple of eagle-eyed viewers that were just watching that little montage might have noticed as well that Rex actually did change these 2 runners. Originally this one was running into this side and this one was looped back into here. So the reason we changed that was just to give us that little bit extra room for this plug boot. Just a little bit extra room to get a plug boot in there, get your hand in there if you had to get the spark plug out, have a socket on there without the ratchet sort of hitting the pipe. So like that's sort of the amount of planning and how anal we are about doing this. So again, we've done quite a few of these turbo LS 4 drives now. We're learning every time and we're trying to make every single one better than the last. It just is how it is. Always try and move forward and learn. And number one problem we've always had with all of these LS 4 drives, you know, the Land Cruiser as well, V80 is a very good example of this, is plug lead. Plug leads and plug boots. So generally they're always just the biggest pain. They get hot, they get soft, they start cracking, and then once they're under load, they start to arc out, and then you develop a miss. And so much of these designs are based around giving enough room around the plug to get a lead on to get a boot on so that the boot's not resting on any of the pipe, and you can try and keep it as far away from all the manifold as possible. So yeah, a lot of planning, a lot of time, and a lot of thought goes into doing these sorts of things. So that's where we're moving towards. At least with this Patrol, it's already been converted. You know, a lot of the real hard stuff's already done. Our part of this build, after obviously building the engine last year, now is just turbo, fuel system, integrate the wiring and stuff and get it tuned. So we have a fair bit of time to sink into doing this sort of thing. So aside from that, you can already see by the way this is taking shape, the rest of the setup is going to be very, very similar to the last one that we did. We've got this time a 5-inch snorkel instead of a 4-inch. So the last one was a Patrol Doctor 4-inch snorkel. I'm not sure what brand this one is, but it is a 5-inch. It is monstrous, huge big snorkel. Turbo is positioned in a very similar spot, but as I just explained, because of the Mark's 4 drive adapters kit, it is a little bit further forward, which actually means a few things. So because it's further forward, just where it ends up being between the chassis rails, you can't run the alternator in the low mount position. So we've got a high mount alternator here, which if you guys remember from the last one, we had the turbo set out here and we had the gate coming off the housing, taking up this sort of space. So obviously this is occupied by an alternator now. And so this time round, we're going to be positioning the gate down where the alternator would normally be. So down the bottom here is where the gate's going to go. Is a really good spot for it. We have a really good idea of where we're going to route the pipe and then plumb it back into the exhaust. So that's going to be great. As I just explained, the exhaust system is going to be very similar to the last one, with some oval tube to get us down on the dump. You would have seen, we actually removed the Mark's 4 drive AC kit that was on this car. Obviously, he purchased it with the conversion and installed it. Would have been all good. We were going to try and run the manifolds up high so that we could leave the low mount AC kit in there. We deliberated, we talked about it, we discussed it, and there was just no nice way to make the manifold that comes in high. There was no nice way to route the runners so that you could get at the plugs properly that way. It was going to leave the collector and things right up next to the battery. There was just so many things about it that we were not too stoked on, so we've removed that. We've ordered the exact same kit that went on the last one from Marlex Motorsports. It uses the standard mini compressor. It's a really nice little kit, high mount, keeps it up here, and it's tight enough to the engine that it doesn't clash with the battery. So we went for the same kit. So that's been removed, and as you can see, that manifold runs down where it would normally run, where we would like to run it.
What if I told you the thrill of running a red light, chasing a recent bright memory through a bent pipe? When you get older, some just wanna hang fire with the rest of a soldier on, sleeping on the tram line. What's the point if we can't escape the landmine? Sand slides faster each day, one day we can die. We'll just ignore it, let the revs chant. I burn laps around the sun for face first to the campfire. Heart racing steps that seal the time, wasting both lives. for burning lands around the sun. We fight for burning lands around the sun.
Righto, boys and girls, a bit more progress going on. As you can see, these manifolds are just about complete. Rex right now is just sorting out the oxygen sensor ports to put the O2s in, like we always do. As you can see, I've started mounting his awesome looking Plasma Man Pro Series intercooler. Really excited to see how this intercooler goes. I think it's going to be really, really great for this thing. So, Plasma Man, off-tap intercooler. It's going to mount very similar to the way the old one mounted. Obviously got to knock this out for our AC port and a few other little things that have to be done, but it's on the way. We've got his new power steering pump as well. Rico power steering pump here. As you can see, a heap of racework stuff ready to start doing our fuel system and breathers and everything else that's going to be happening with this thing. So plenty of parts here to keep going. We've got our Aeroflow surge tank, which houses an intake pump. So we put our raceworks pump in the surge tank, exactly how we did the old one. Although this one will be a bit different because our customer has supplied a Walbro 460. So we'll put the Walbro 460 in the surge, and then our Raceworks 340 will actually go in the main tank as a lift pump. We've got our same oil air separators that we used on the last Turbo GU Ute. It's going to be essentially the same breather setup. I'm pretty sure I already went through it, but we've also got our Muscle Garage coil relocation kit. This one's going to be a little bit different in that we're not putting this on the firewall on this one. We're actually going to mount these up on top of the intake manifold like we did on V80, just to try and give us a bit more room and allow us a bit better route for the coil leads is the plan. So as well as that, we also got our 1000cc injectors ready to go in the manifold. We've got our sand and pump and high mount AC kit ready to go, a brand new starter. We've got our Defi Advanced ZD copy gauge thing. As these guys know, we put these in a lot of these projects where we're running the Gen 3 PCM. Obviously, with all these digital dashes on the market these days, there are some great options if you have a CAN ECU, but the Gen 3 PCM is only serial, which means a lot of these dashes that are on the market at the moment don't actually operate with the stock Gen 3 ECU, which is why we generally just go to one of these. It's a very cheap, effective, neat way to be able to display all of the relative information that you really need to see. And then you can also set alarms for upper and lower limits for all the information on the Defi, which means it will alarm at you if it, you might drop oil pressure or drop fuel pressure or the water gets too hot, it will alarm. So as far as, a digital dash, it's just about the next best thing, really. Unfortunately, the radiator that the owner supplied for this thing is it's a wide radiator, whereas this being one of the very last factory intercooled 4.2 Utes, it's like very end of 06, so it'd be one of the very last ones. They actually came with a narrow radiator, so from what I understand, a lot of these late factory intercooled TD42s had the narrow rad, much like the TB48, so that's exactly what we've ordered. We've ordered a TB48 rad. The way the outputs are laid out on the radiator is actually going to help us over a TD42 radiator. It's going to be a bit nicer. So we've ordered one of them, it's on the way, so we'll go narrow rad. So yeah, it's coming together. We're waiting on the rest of the engine loom, which is being done not in-house, so that's being done by Rewire at Kunda Park. So they finished the actual engine side with the ECU, that's here. But the actual integration side for the car with the fuse box, and I'm assuming the gearbox loom and everything, is still on the way. So that's coming out this weekend. After that's here, we can start making a bit more progress on the wiring side. But, our involvement is obviously this fab stuff, the wiring, and then the fuel system. So when you put it like that, it doesn't seem like that much work. And I think these manifolds definitely have been the biggest part of the project. They're really, really nice, as you've seen. Some of the nicest Turbo Patrol manifolds I've ever seen. But yeah, hours and hours and hours and hours of work. But it will all be worth it, hopefully. We'll see if we have the same issues. So the last GU Ute we did with the log manifolds, I actually had to go do a warranty job on it yesterday. I had to replace the turbo core, just an issue with the turbo housing. And the pipework, the manifolds and stuff on it, it has been up the beach a few times since it was finished, and they haven't held up very well. They're not looking too great. So obviously the ceramic paint with the baking in the oven like we did with that isn't gonna work. It's not gonna cut it. We sort of knew it at the time, just with that, it was a budget thing. But with this one, given how those manifolds have not held up very well, we really wanna try and get these manifolds to our boys there at Kalula Sandblasting and Coatings and get them properly ceramic coated so that hopefully they hold up a bit better for going up the beach and that sort of thing. So we'd like to do it with the other one as well. One day when he's got time, we'd really like to get those manifolds back off and get them coated properly so that they hold up a bit better. But anyway, it is what it is. That is the plan with it. So we're hoping that the thermofans we've ordered still gonna fit on the narrow rad. We think they will. We'll wait and see what happens when it gets here. We also got our heater hoses, same as last time. VC, I think, VBVC 308 hose, just two of the same hose. Same thing you do on a VE if you want to remove the heater hoses. They seem to work really well for this application. We've got a fair bit of our AC stuff here to make our custom AC lines to fit this thing, but we are still waiting on quite a bit of stuff that is on back order. So we'll wait and see what gets here. Hopefully everything gets here in time. As well as that, we've got our throttle cable. So this is a TB48 throttle cable, same as last time. You just have to make a little bit of a custom bracket off the intake manifold for it to suit the throttle cam, but the pedal end and the firewall end bolt straight in, which is really, really nice. So same as last time. Now, when we built this engine, we did put a AN10 fitting on the sump for a turbo return, but it's just in the wrong spot. It's just not gonna work. So we've actually got some little 5/8 alley tube, which I got picked up yesterday as well. And we're gonna try and do a return off the timing cover, much like Kiloboost and stuff would. So very much similar to what Kiloboost does with his covers. They're really, really handy. We do use them quite a lot, but we're gonna try our hand in welding our own on this particular one in the place where we need it. So we've got that here to get that sorted too. So we've got our leads and socks from Ice Ignition here as well for when that comes time. So yeehaw, same thing. Obviously the manifold design is largely based around ensuring that these are safe and don't get too affected, as well as obviously the heat shields that you've seen go onto the manifolds, which as we talked about, they're not going to be the prettiest, but as long as they work and you're not changing plug boots all the time, then that's a win. So that's going to be fine. And lucky last bit of the puzzle, we've got our two 3.5 inch round to oval transitions, which I picked up yesterday. Been waiting on them. They're a lot easier just to buy than they are to make. They still need a little bit of shaping, but it's still a lot better than trying to make some. And that is for the dump pipe where we have to convert from round to oval to get down between the manifold and the inner guard down the back there. So all the pieces of the puzzle are coming together to get this thing sorted, but there's still a bit to go. But I think that's enough for one episode. That's essentially the manifolds in this episode, is basically what it's all around. And looking forward to getting a bit more progress happening on this thing, getting a bit closer. So again, like I said, with every one of these we do, we're trying to make it better and better. So we just keep on carrying what we've learnt, keep on doing better and better projects. But yeah, looking forward to this thing. I think it's gonna be an animal, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks guys, check out the merch. Go check it, buy yourself some merch. We'll see you on the next one. Peace out, see you, bye.